Welcome in, everybody, to episode 19 of Girl. How'd you get that gig? I know, we're rolling.
We are.
Yeah, for my co-host Celeste Gehring, I'm Amy G, and our guest today, get ready, okay? She's an award-winning athletic trainer with over 30 years of experience in the athletic training / sports medicine profession. She actually began, Celeste, as a university athletic trainer and has worked with Olympians, professional athletes, NCAA champs. She's also a youth sports safety advocate. I love that. And the owner of Concussion Navigation Services in beautiful San Luis Obispo, California, providing baseline testing, injury management, professional education, and consulting. Oh my gosh, I don't even know how she had time to join us, but please welcome in Stacey Ritter. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank
Welcome,
you for having
Stacey.
me. Looking forward to the conversation.
All right. Well, since we're going to be talking about a pretty serious subject with your career, we're going to go starting a little bit light in this podcast with a trivia game we love to play called Girl Gig Quick Pick.
Love it.
Stacey, we think you're going to do well on this one because we're going to be talking about your hometown, the beautiful San Luis Obispo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ready to play?
See how I do. Let's see how I do.
Okay.
You got
All
this.
right.
You got this.
Okay. First one's multiple choice.
Okay.
What was San Luis Obispo originally called due to its lawless nature? A, Wild West Town, B, Tiger Town, C, Gold Rush Town, or D, Stagecoach Town?
Oh,
Bunch of wild ones down
know
there.
this. I haven't heard
Wild
this.
West.
I'm going to go with Wild West, just because.
That's what I thought, but it is actually Tiger Town.
Tiger Town.
Tiger Town.
Did not know that.
Right? Very weird, but
Learn something new.
Exactly. That's why we do this, because we like to learn about it too. All right. Second question. It's true or false, Stacey. The concept of the motor hotel or motel was invented in San Luis Obispo.
That is true.
It is true.
And it still exists. It's not operational, but the building itself still exists. And there are some people that are interested in renovating it and bringing it back to its former glory.
I hope they make it a bar.
Oh, it'd be so cool.
That would be cool. All right, another one. True or false again for you, Stacey. San Luis Obispo was the first town in the United States to ban smoking.
Oh, I'm going to say false on that one.
It's true.
Isn't it? Boy, we're awesome.
You are awesome.
Yes,
so
you are.
Yeah. Okay. This one's a long one, so settle in. All right. It's multiple choice, so just turn your ears on. All right, here we go. Which of these is incorrect?
Okay.
A, Zac Efron was born in Slow. B, Oprah declared the town the happiest town in the U.S. C, Jamba Juice was started there. Or D, the giant bubblegum wall downtown was made because bubblegum was invented in San Luis Obispo.
Okay. Well, I know Zac Efron is from the area. That's for sure. And I know Oprah declared us the happiest place on the planet. Or
yeah.
And we were like, shh, don't tell people. Shh, don't tell people.
we're getting crowded.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so it's between C and D. So Jamba Juice or the bubblegum wall?
Well, the bubblegum wall does exist, and it's a sight and a smell to behold. But I don't think that bubblegum was invented in San Luis.
D. 3 out of 4. Way to go. So a little background. This is just kind of fun. The 15 by 70 foot bubblegum wall doesn't have a clear history. Some think it started as a high school tradition after World War II, and others think it was a rivalry between high schools and college students. I don't know what that rivalry is. Like we have more gum than you. Look at our side of the wall. I don't know. But
what's shocking to me is how high up the gum actually goes. So I want to know how it got there. And then I don't want to know.
Exactly. I was like, do you really want to know? Do you want to know? Yeah.
I thought I wanted to see it, but at the same time, I don't think I want to see it. One of those.
Pictures of it.
It's a sight to behold, but like I said, the smell is quite overwhelming because it's all of the flavors with just this, underlying minty thing happening. And yeah, it's better to look at it than it is to actually.
Yeah. You have been warned. You have been warned. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Celeste, let's get started.
Okay. Great job on the trivia, Stacey. Stacey, I love what your website says. Concussion care is complicated, confusing, and constantly changing. That is why you need a concussion navigator.
Yeah.
So simply, what is concussion care and what do you do?
Simply. Well,
Simply.
I'll tell you what concussion care is. It's new. It's the best way to put it because for years, all we knew was rest and wait, rest and wait, rest and wait. There's really nothing you can do. It's not a treatable injury. Sorry, just kind of wait it out and hope for the best. And that is not true any longer. There is overwhelming support in the research that states that early active rehab leads to best outcomes. So,
Mm.
um, concussion care can be, broadly speaking, it can be prevention, it can be emergency care, it can be recognizing signs and symptoms so that you can remove someone from play. It can be education for coaches, athletes, parents. It can be actually taking care of the injury. It can be helping someone decide whether they want to continue to play. I have a former athlete right now who's at that point where he's deciding maybe he's done having concussions, which, fair enough. He's young man ready to start his future and wants to make good decisions. So it's quite a spectrum, right? There's lots of research going on and it's coming out. It comes out like a fire hose.
Yeah.
And then what I do is I really want to make sure that every single brain has the equal chance to heal completely, regardless of ability to pay, regardless of insurance, regardless of past history, regardless of how long ago the injury occurred. And so it takes a lot of unpacking sometimes, a lot of what I call Sherlock Holmesing, where I kind
Mhm.
of dig in and find out, okay, who were you before the injury? How did the injury affect you? And then how can we individualize care specific to you so that we can get you back to work, sports, school, life.
Yeah, it is such a big topic, and like you said, it is coming out like a fire hose. I mean, I remember when I first started covering the Giants, there was no concussion protocol
Nope.
in place. If a catcher took one off, the mask, and said, "I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm
Yeah.
fine," they put him right back in.
Yeah.
And what I really started noticing was with Buster Posey, who,
Yes.
was their number one pick. And
Yeah.
they didn't handle him with kid gloves, but once he started showing signs, it was like, we gotta make sure that we keep him in a place where
Right.
he can continue to play for us. So,
Right.
and the symptoms, I can't wait to get into this because I
Yeah.
know so many people who've had them and different symptoms from,
Mm-hmm.
short-term memory loss to vision never really getting regained and all of
Mm-hmm.
that stuff. I remember Brandon Belt had that like
Oh yeah.
several times, like couldn't get his vision and it was so frustrating. So,
Yeah.
but I want to back up because I want to learn a lot about you, and that's how people connect, and people who are listening and like, I want to do what she does. It's so
Yeah.
much fun to kind of find out where you're from, where you grew up, and your personal
Personal back.
background with sports. So
Okay.
will you kind of paint that picture for us?
How did it all start?
How did it
I
all
was,
start? Mom and dad
yeah.
met. Yeah.
Well, I was always the tomboy. I always the one with the skin knees. The sport that I found early and found success at early was swimming. So I was an aquatics athlete and still am an aquatics athlete. So as long as it's on the water, I'll do it. But I was a competitive swimmer for a long time. And that was up until high school. I could have walked on in the college scene, but when I found out that my high school friends that were going to be swimming in college were getting up at the crack of dawn and
Yeah.
having to swim and then go to class and then having to swim again. And I'm like, yeah, I'm good.
A lot of
I'm gonna hang out
hours.
over here. I knew I wanted to do something medical. Medical always interested me. I thought I was going to do physical therapy. And I will say internships are important because I did a summer internship at a physical therapy clinic and discovered I really didn't care for it as much as I thought I would. But the people I liked working with were the athletes because they were already highly motivated. They were already had a baseline of fitness and health,
Mm.
highly motivated, and I just really, the personalities were always very dynamic, and I could relate to them because I was an athlete as well. So at my university, I went to Cal State Long Beach, now no Long Beach State, but that's where I went for my undergraduate. I was it's back when we had football also, but I was at a
Mhm.
football game and I saw a girl run out on the field for an injury. And this is at a time when there weren't women on the sidelines of football teams, period. There weren't.
Mhm.
And I'm like, who is she and what is she doing? And someone I was sitting with said, well, that's one of the athletic training students. She's learning about sports medicine. She gets to work with the teams. And I went, oh, sign me up. So I went down on Monday to the department and I said, tell me about this thing. And it was, basically you'll be working with athletes, preventing their injuries, diagnosing or evaluating is really the better way to put it, evaluating their injuries and then helping them rehabilitate back to sport. And I'd been a lifeguard, I'd taught swimming, but as part of being a lifeguard, you learn all of the first aid, right? The CPR and the rescue and the first aid. And so I already had this sort of medical background. I thought, wait a minute, if I could do medical on athletes, I am interested in that. And I feel so lucky that I found the thing I was meant to do. Really, really lucky.
When you were growing up, who were some of your favorite athletes and why? We actually and just so you know,
Yeah.
our last episode, we interviewed 6-time Olympic gold swimmer, Amy Van Dyken, who I don't know
Yeah,
if you
she's
know her.
awesome.
She's
Of
amazing.
course.
Yes, she
Yeah.
is incredible. So who were some of your favorite athletes?
Oh my gosh. Well, let's see. I was in high school during the 84 Olympics. So I got to see all of that unfold. And I had people I swam with that were way better than I was that, were going on and swimming in college. Pablo Morales was a big deal at the time, Bay Area guy. There was a guy it was a swimmer from Germany who specialized in butterfly, and his name was Michael Gross. And they called him the albatross because his wingspan was longer than his height. So there's more trivia. Our wingspan is supposed to be the same as our height.
Right.
And his was longer. And I remember watching him in the Olympics and just, marveling at the athletes. Rowdy Gaines was just finishing his career, and now he's a commentator. And those were some of the athletes that I really enjoyed watching.
You know who I remember from those games most is Mary Lou Retton.
Yes.
She was, and I'm 5'10". There was no hope. Like, I was taller than her in 84 and I was 9 or 10 years old. So, but I remember those games so vividly, and she sticks out, and she's the reason I have a fake tooth.
Oh, see?
She's the reason. Yeah. Yes. I tried to be her and it didn't work out.
That's why there's only one.
And that tooth is all Mary Lou right there.
All Mary Lou.
Yeah.
Mary Lou tooth.
It is. You know what? It's for her. So you attended at Long Beach State, which is what we know it as now. You saw this girl run onto the field, which is the epitome of, if you can see it, you can be it, which I love.
Yeah.
What did you major in? And then what was education for you past undergrad?
So at that time, the athletic training program, sports medicine program, was based in the PE department. So I actually had to major in PE. They since changed it to kinesiology.
Yeah.
You should have seen me trying to tell my parents I was going to major in PE, and she's like, "You're majoring in recess," and I said, "No,
there's a lot of science involved, Mom. I swear."
Yeah, exactly. And so the way it worked at the time was, once you had your degree, then you could sit for the national certification exam, which I did, passed it the first time, which was not common at the time, but my mentors scared the heck out of us just into passing it the first time. From there, I went to, actually, I worked for a year. I didn't realize there was a thing there, at that time, there was no such thing as a gap year. It was just, you didn't know what you were doing yet. So I did get a job.
Because your parents are like, get a job.
Exactly.
That was my gap.
Get out of the house.
Exactly.
I had a gap day. I had a gap day.
So I did get a job as a high school athletic trainer for just that football season. And then once that football season was over, then I was kind of searching again. And just by sheer happenstance, ended up deciding to go to graduate school at Cal State Fullerton. And again, didn't even realize at the time that it was one of the best athletic training programs in the country. Also didn't know at the time that the woman who was the head athletic trainer, also not common in that era, she is one of the most well-regarded women in athletic training. She was the first female president of the National Athletic Trainers Association.
Wow.
Her name is Julie Max. I'm still in contact with her. She's remarkable. She has mentored so many extraordinary professionals. And so she was running that program. But again, I was so naive. I'm like, sure, I'll get sure because I could get a graduate assistantship, right? So I could take my classes as well as get professional experience simultaneously. And at the end, I would have gained 2 more years of experience plus had a master's degree. So
Wow.
that was the route that I took without
Mhm.
even realizing I'd fallen into the lap of the best mentor I could have ever happened upon. So it was just a gift, a total gift.
So you were referred to me from Elsa Bender, who not only is my daughter's volleyball coach for club, but was a badass volleyball player. She's a beast, and I mean that in
Yes.
like the most complimentary way. When
Yes.
I see pictures of her, I'm like, I'm so glad I didn't play against her in
Oh yeah.
college. Oh my, I just would have been like, I just
Yeah.
and but you were her athletic trainer at UOP.
Correct.
So take us, on that trajectory of a university athletic trainer and then to kind of where you are now as a concussion specialist, owning your own business. And what was the impetus to broaden what you do, but also go really specific with what you do?
Right. So right after graduate school, I ended up at UOP. I was there for 6 years. I was their associate director of athletic training. Elsa and I worked really closely together because
Yeah.
she had an ACL tear,
Hmm.
but went on to become a two-time All-American post-injury.
Hmm.
So that was a testament not only to, our hard work together, but her tenacity
Yeah.
and inability to sit down and say no. Like she was going for it. So
Yeah.
I worked there for a while. I ended up getting engaged to another athletic trainer, but he worked at UCSB.
Okay.
And so it was like, okay, would you rather live in
Ooh,
Stockton, California, nothing
ooh,
against Stockton, or
no, but
Santa Barbara?
yeah, there's not really a choice there. I
Right.
understand. Yeah.
But the only position that was available in Santa Barbara at the time was at a high school, and I really was not sure that I wanted to go from Division I college athletics to high school. There was kind of this perception that the high school athletic trainers are the ones that are not good enough for Division I, and that is fundamentally inaccurate because
Mhm.
I will challenge any university athletic trainer to walk a mile in a high school athletic trainer's shoes. When you are one athletic trainer and you've
Yep.
got 800 athletes
Yep.
and multiple venues happening all at the same time, and you have parents because these are minors. I mean, it's a
Totally.
whole other layer of complexity.
Yep.
So I did that for 4 years in Santa Barbara. I was at Santa Barbara High School. And I'll tell you, that high school experience didn't just make me a better clinician, it made me a better human being. I mean, I
Mhm.
just learned about communication and learned about meeting people where they are and learning about different perspectives and different journeys that kids have been on. And I mean, there were kids at that high school and they said, "You're the first doctor I've ever had." And I said, "Well, I'm not even a doctor." And they said, "Yeah,
Yeah.
but I've never gotten any healthcare before."
Mm.
So really changing
Wow.
young people's lives is that's what started the journey to youth sports advocacy,
Mhm.
because I was seeing kids that were being left on the side of the road as far as healthcare was concerned, and the healthcare disparity was very evident
Yes.
at that time, and so that kind of planted the seed. So I was there for 4 years. Then we were ready for a change, and there was a position open at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. My husband applied for that one. I just felt like I was done with the university level now that I'd had this experience with the kids. But there was a physical therapy company in San Luis Obispo that had multiple clinics, and they wanted to give back to their community by providing full-time certified athletic trainers to the high schools.
Wow.
And so that was the program that I managed. And I started with 6 high schools, and it ended up growing, ended up with 13 total.
Wow.
And then I was able to transition those outreach. So it was clinic outreach. They were hired by the clinic and then placed in the high schools. We were able to transition that program so that all of the athletic trainers were hired directly by their school districts,
Mhm.
full-time athletic training only. If they wanted to teach sports medicine classes, that was an option. But, historically you had to be hired as a teacher and then you could be an athletic trainer after school. And this completely shifted the paradigm. So we've got a certified athletic trainer in every single high school hired by the district. Their salaries have gone up and up and up over the years. So it's just, I'm really, really proud of the program that we built and that they are sustaining. Like I laid the groundwork, but they're the ones that have continued to help it flourish and grow. So that was a major deal.
So
The
cool.
one, yeah, it was really cool. I mean, just knowing that all of those kids are playing sports with um, immediate, accessible, appropriately trained access to medical
Qualified.
care.
Yeah,
Mhm.
they're
That, I
qualified.
mean, yeah.
Mhm.
And we had some very, very serious injuries, and our athletic trainers literally saved lives during the
Mhm.
time I ran that program, and really made a difference, really made a difference, and still are. So I'm really proud of them. But that left me without a program to manage once we transitioned them to being full-time district employees.
District. Yep.
And my boss at the physical therapy company said, "Well, what would you like to do next?" And one of the things that had happened kind of accidentally during that time that I was managing the outreach program was California passed its youth sports concussion law.
Mhm.
And so, in order to make sure that all of my staff were in compliance with the law and their schools were in compliance with the law, then I sort of became the de facto concussion expert because I was, implementing policies for all of the schools. And also so that there wasn't one school that could say, oh, well, they're doing it this way. So we want to, no, all of them are doing it the
Same.
same way. This
Same.
is a county-wide policy. If a kid from high school X gets injured while playing at high school Y, it is the same care,
Mhm.
period. It's the standard of care. So it was a big learning curve for coaches, athletic directors, parents, athletes, pediatricians, team doctors. So that was my job, was to make sure everybody understood the policy, implemented the policy, stayed compliant with the policy. But what I learned was that the only people that were having their concussions appropriately identified and managed were those that had access to an athletic trainer. So that would be the high schools, the community colleges, and the university. But what about youth sports? What about club sports? What about adult athletes? What
Mhm.
about car accidents? What about slip and fall? Nobody was applying that same high standard of care to the rest of the community. So I said, that's what I want to do. I want to be the athletic trainer for everyone else in the community that doesn't otherwise have one. So I opened a concussion clinic for that PT group. And then the pandemic hit.
Oh.
And because it was in its infancy and it was still the lost leader, um, after 14 years, I unfortunately, along with 200 of my colleagues at that company, we got laid off. My program was
Mhm.
discontinued.
Mm.
But people kept finding me and they said, "Hey, my friend saw you for a concussion. Can you take care of mine?" And just one patient at a time, a friend of mine was subleasing to me a little office space that she had. And then it was like, well, if I'm going to do this, I better do it right and find my own clinic space. And that was about 2.5 years ago.
Wow.
You know what's funny? I know Celeste has a question, but I just want to like chime in on the pandemic. And I'm probably going to get canceled. I always say something in a show, I'm probably going to get canceled. But I'm like, while it might have been a really like difficult transition, there were so many people drinking during the pandemic. I can only imagine the number of slips and falls that were looking for you, right? Like
Well, it was
we started
really
drinking
in
at like 2 o'clock. We're like, well, I mean, we're not going anywhere.
I didn't see too many alcohol related concussions during that
I'm
time.
teasing,
But
but I
what's
thought it
really,
might have been good for business.
yeah, what's really funny though is that, people weren't, concussion sort of came off the radar because sports were discontinued during that time too. And
Right.
so there was this kind of disconnect. Well, people who aren't playing sports don't get concussions. And so then there was that whole bit too. But they were, and it was a lot of, well, there's car accidents, but there was a lot of
Yes.
falls. There was a lot of like home gym accidents
Yep.
or people being outside, a lot of mountain biking accidents and that sort of thing. So I bet if we looked at the statistics, there would be some, if they weren't coming from sports, where were they coming from? That would be really
Right.
interesting to look at.
Mhm. So for the people that
I'm just kidding.
are
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
so
Hey, it's
for,
job security.
for the people that are watching that want to do what you do,
Yeah.
what would be some first steps that they would take to get there?
For athletic training or for being a concussion specialist?
Probably concussion
Both.
specialist, I
I
think.
think both.
Yeah,
Throw it
think
out
both?
there.
Okay, throw it
Sure.
out there.
Yeah,
Let's
you could
go.
do it all.
We could go concussion, we could go athletic trainer, we could go business owner, we could go
I know,
different
right?
directions
There's
on
so
this,
many.
right? Yeah. So just briefly, the athletic training profession has evolved. So now the minimum degree is a master's degree. And in order to become a certified athletic trainer, it has to be through what we call a CATIE approved athletic training education program. So not every college has an approved athletic training education program. So they would have to locate one of those and then enroll in that. Master's degree is the minimum. And then there's still that national board certification requirement. A lot of athletic trainers are also pursuing a doctor of athletic training, a DAT or a PhD. It's not required, but a lot of people are going that direction. But it is quite extensive medical education. We do far more than band-aids and ice bags.
Yeah.
If that's all we did, we wouldn't need the master's degree and the National Board of Certification exam.
Right.
Yeah, when I played basketball at LSU, I know the athletic trainers were kind of up and coming at that time. And I just remember learning so much about my body through the trainers, like stretching and things I had never thought about before. And we had a strength coach who would literally have us lift other women on our backs. And I was one of the shortest post players on the team at 6 feet. I was listed at 6'3", as 6'3", but I'm really 6 feet tall. And I would have players that were 6'8", 6'7" on my back going up these steep levees. And the trainer was the one that told the strength coach, like, don't don't do that. You're totally blowing out their knees. And thank goodness for her. I mean, I still have, major knee problems to this day, but it was the trainers. And it's so reassuring that you have to get a master's in that now and the education, because it really is a science about the human body. And it really is about educating, the athletes about what they can do for preventive maintenance as well as maintenance once they get hurt. And I just think it's so refreshing that has been continuing to grow and grow and grow, because it's so needed. People, like when I was playing, we didn't know what the heck was going on, right? We were just like, okay, tell us what to do. We don't know.
Told.
Yeah.
Right.
We don't have any resources to go to.
No, I mean the education, the courses that we take are really high level courses. It by definition an athletic trainer, and we use the term athletic trainer or AT so that we don't get confused with personal trainers. There was some personal trainer shenanigans up in the Bay Area a number of years ago with a particular baseball player who kind of muddied the waters a little bit. So when we say AT or athletic trainers, and that those are the medical specialists instead of like the fitness or conditioning specialists. But it's prevention, emergency care, evaluation, rehabilitation, professional education. And within each of those, there's pharmacology, there's orthopedic assessment, there is life-saving techniques for head, heat, and heart issues, which are the three leading causes of death in sports: head, heat, and heart. So we learn how to prevent and we learn how to manage those if they do happen. Damar Hamlin, athletic trainer, saved his life. So those are, just a little smidgen. And then athletic trainers work in so many different settings. They can work in a clinic, performing arts, public safety. They work in the military. They work in obviously the traditional settings. They work in research. They can be physician extenders. I mean, there's just no ending of where we can bring our knowledge and our experience. One of my favorite volunteer gigs that I do is I volunteer for the rodeo when it comes through. And working with rodeo medicine that's a whole other level. It's really interesting.
I can only imagine. Yeah. And then get thrown off the bull and
oh my gosh. Yeah, we've seen some really horrifying mechanisms of injury, and those guys are tough as nails.
They are. So I want the first steps as a concussion specialist too.
Yeah.
And then Celeste, I just want to put this to talk about later. Why in the world would carrying a 6'8" woman up a hill help you in basketball? We'll get back to that.
Okay.
We'll revisit that.
So confused. I'm like, how does that help?
Revisit that.
All right. What would be first steps in, trying to attain the level that you're at regarding being a concussion specialist?
There's a couple really good programs out there where you can do what I did is I took the coursework to become a concussion specialist. I didn't feel comfortable calling myself a specialist unless I'd done specialized training and specialized education. There are a lot of people that, well, I've worked with a lot of concussions, therefore I specialize in it. You know, that's one way to look at it. But for me, my own integrity, I need to back that up with specialty training. And there's a number of programs that do that. And the one that I went through is actually based out of Canada. It's called Complete Concussion Management, or CCMI. I'm one of only 6 in the state of California that have that clinic certification through CCMI. I'm also one of their blog writers, but they have CCMI professionals around the world. So it's really interesting. We get to collaborate with each other. I can, reach out to someone in Australia or reach out to someone in Great Britain. And it's very, very cool. Most of them are in Canada. UPMC is one of the kind of breeding grounds of really excellent research in concussion. Emory in Atlanta is another phenomenal concussion program there. Any place that does a lot of research on it typically has some type of higher level education that you can do. If you're in your undergraduate or your master's degree level and you think that concussion is something that's really interesting to you, then find a university that does research on concussion and attend that university for your next degree and get involved in the research level, because that's going to attract all of the best minds in that particular field and really give you not only a great education, but it'll give you a great network of other professionals in the same area that can lead you to the next portion of your own show. Like I said, I stumbled onto mine a little bit later in my career, but I just did a ton of research on what program looked the most robust, which looked the most current, which looked the most evidence-based. I don't rely on any gadgets or high-tech instrumentation, because it is not proven to be any more effective than more basic interventions. And those more expensive, fancy tools and gadgets will eventually become obsolete, probably pretty soon. And then you have to replace it, and it's expensive, and you have to pass that cost on to your patients. And I won't do that. I mean, I do only what the evidence says is the most effective and the safest. But, and on top of that, I have my own experience on what works and doesn't work. But that's what I would recommend, is to find those universities that have really outstanding concussion programs, find really good concussion clinics that are all over the country, and maybe do an internship or maybe do an internship, or maybe do a fellowship there if they'll allow that, or partner with one of the people that works there for a remote opportunity. Maybe there's some mentoring opportunities in that way. But find the people that are the best at what they do and ask them how they do it.
When I was a producer for Fox Sports, I was lucky enough to be on the sidelines. And I remember it was a Detroit Lions game, standing on the sidelines, and when the players hit each other, it sounded like a car crash. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've been to, Amy and I have been to so many sports games, so many sporting events. And I mean, they're hitting hard, but to actually be on the field and hear that, and it was like a car crash every time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how do these players survive that? How do they even, function after getting hit like that? And, it's very topical. We're talking a lot in sports about CTE and concussions being linked to CTE and all of that. I want to know, you were talking about Hamlin and life-saving techniques and being on the field. How do you slow down that adrenaline? Because I know my heart was pumping out of my chest. I was freaking out, and I was just standing there. I can't imagine having to go in and save someone's life, or having that moment where it's so critical that what you do is going to save someone's life. What's your mindset during that time?
Well, we're very committed to what we call EAPs, or emergency action plans. And so we plan for the bad stuff and we rehearse it every year. It's recommended that they do it. And I know they do it at the professional level, but at the university level, the high school level, there absolutely should be an emergency action plan, and it should be rehearsed on an annual basis, so that when those events happen, it's autopilot and everything goes dark on the outside, and all you're seeing is your patient. It relies on training, it relies on teamwork, and it relies on education. And the more times you've rehearsed it, it's why we have to take CPR every year. It's not because we've forgotten how to do it. It's because we want it to be so second nature that in that moment that it happens, we know you just kicks in. It just kicks into autopilot. Some people realize early in their career that they don't have that. When they get out in the moment and they feel like, oh, I kind of froze there. And so then you have a decision to make. Okay, do you want to keep building that muscle and get better and better at it and desensitize yourself to the adrenaline and to the crowds and the noise and the uh-oh kind of moment? Or do you feel like, you know what, that's not me. I still want to be an athletic trainer, but maybe not sideline care, maybe not in a traditional setting. Maybe I'm more comfortable in a rehabilitation clinic or at a hospital setting rather than I am on a sideline setting. And I've been involved in some really horrific injuries. And yeah, there's like baseball reference, clear the mechanism, right?
Yep.
And you just
Kevin Costner.
Exactly. Some people do it very naturally. I find that I'm someone that does it really naturally. In the moment, I am so focused and have planned ahead so thoroughly that if A, then B, and we just execute the plan. And then afterwards, we have our moment of debriefing and decompression. And that's when we have our, oh my gosh, that just happened moment. And that may be where all of the emotions come out and that sort of thing. But in that moment, practice before something like that happens really helps. Really helps.
Reps
Running
and
scenarios all the time.
Yep. And then you just kind of go into go mode, what you know. Where do you think, so, in my career with baseball, what I've seen evolve, they tried to get the larger caps that were like padded. And I remember one player wearing it, a pitcher. I remember seeing Joe Martinez take a comebacker off the head, go down on the mound, get up, and his face looked like it had turned into the Elephant Man in like a matter of 30 seconds. So much blood had gone, and it was all enlarged and engorged. And Dave Greshner, who's the head athletic trainer for the Giants, had him missed the temple by like millimeters. Football, obviously, we're seeing so much attention towards CTE and what's happening to athletes after they're done playing or while they're playing. There have been some changes to helmets. If you can share your opinion on where they've come with technology and helmets and sports and where they need to go.
Right. It's obviously a concern that it's a problem everyone's trying to solve. Where it stands today, and this is when I do a lot of education for, the sports community, not just the medical community, but the sports community, the reality is, unless and until there's something you can put on the outside of the skull that mitigates the movement of the brain inside the skull, there is nothing that you can put. You can wrap that head in bubble wrap as much as you want. I don't know if you've seen the Guardian caps. They're like the foamy that go over the top of the football helmet. And I mean, for the little kids, it just makes their heads heavier. There's like doing this. But and in it, I think it's extra strain on the neck, to be honest with you. But and it also lends a false sense of security. So there have been a number of studies that were done, and even a couple of schools that they don't use helmets during practice. Period. They only wear helmets during games, and they watch their concussion rates drop by about 30%. And it's because they had to go back to technique.
They're more careful because
they're more careful.
Yeah.
They're not using the helmet so that they can use their head.
Right.
The helmet is there in case they hit their head.
Right. The helmet provides a false sense of security.
Correct.
To a degree.
Yeah.
It's funny when you first said that, the mom mode kicked in. I'm like, what? They're not wearing their helmet? And then I was like, oh, interesting. They have to talk about technique, fundamentals.
The Dartmouth actually is one of those universities that did an Ivy League school, right? They have some brains they want to protect. And instead of the athletes tackling each other in practice dozens of times, they have tackling robots so that you're not injuring yourself on one of your own teammates all week long at practice and then injuring yourself on an opponent on a weekend, right? You think about it, the teammates are injuring themselves potentially.
Yes.
So how about
Totally.
instead of hitting each other, we have tackling robots that can run the routes and can do multiple reps. And now you're not potentially injuring two people at one time. So
it also spares a lot of fights. My husband
Mm.
covers the Raiders, and you think because your teammates, everything's cool.
Yeah.
Well, training camp, so many fights break out amongst the players, and then now you're knocking each other's heads around more. And
Yeah.
if it's a robot, you
Yeah.
can't get mad at them.
Go kick the robot. Yeah.
Go kick the robot. Yeah. Yeah.
So that I know, and I know they're still trying to find, the next greatest helmet. They've got the ones that you see in the NFL now. They have sort of a kind of it almost looks like a flap, and what it's designed to do is to collapse in and take some of the force away. So a lot of the research is on distributing the force, so it dissipates instead of the brain having to absorb it. But here's kind of an interesting take on that is we get a lot of research on concussions. Two places, sports provides a lot of research on concussions. The military provides a lot of research on concussions.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously they have very high-tech protective equipment when they're out there. But if it's a blast injury, that soldier is potentially getting 3 different assaults to the brain simultaneously. So it's whatever caused the blast, that it's literally they call it a concussive, they're sound waves that move the brain inside the skull. And then if there's anything physical that hits their head, shrapnel or debris, and then it's when the body hits the ground. So now we've got 3 different blows to the brain all at the same time. I can't think of a exterior device that's going to prevent that soldier from receiving all 3 of those blows. I've went to a session once with one of the medical directors who was running research for the military, and they were talking about these face shields that can dissipate force as well, at least from the sound blast. But there's so many different factors involved. And when the definition now of concussion is a blow to the head, neck, or body sufficient enough to create movement of the brain inside the skull. So now we can get a blow to the body. There's no helmet that's going to prevent that either.
And with all this information coming out now and we're seeing it everywhere, what is something that you wish people would know about concussions? Like, what do you want them to know?
My number one thing that's going to be on my headstone when I die.
Yeah.
No more rest and wait. No more rest and wait. Seek active rehabilitation with somebody trained in the management of concussion. Even if your doctor says there's nothing you can do, you're just going to have to go home and wait it out. That is incorrect. The research does not support that. It is no longer best practice. If I could tell everybody one thing in the world, number one, we can't prevent concussion. We can minimize risk, but we can't prevent it. And number 2, if a concussion does occur, remove yourself from activity immediately. The longer you stay in, the longer your recovery will be. And then get evaluated by someone who is trained in concussion. Because depending on when somebody went to school, where they went to school, there's a good chance they never even really dug very deeply in to concussion education. So, I mean, if it's, some of them newer providers, whether it's nurse practitioners or PAs or newer physicians, they're learning more about it than people that went to medical school 10, 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And once you get into your groove as a healthcare provider, it's really hard to have somebody come in and tell you you're doing it wrong and you got to do it differently. Right. Yeah. So there's habits there that need to be broken, but patients can always advocate for themselves.
So you're saying so many things. My head is like, I hope my brain's not moving, but I feel like it might be because there's so much information coming
So
out.
rattling around in there.
I don't want it to rattle around. Don't move. I'm trying to keep it very still. So two-part question. I love that, don't rest and wait, like be proactive, but like, what would you say? I'm in Petaluma. What do I look up? Concussion specialist? Or like, if I think my child has one or I have one or whatever, what am I looking up to find this or asking my medical provider about?
Yeah, I love that question. Most of my patients find me on Google. Or word of mouth. I would love for the medical community to refer directly to me, and it's getting better. I'm getting more from the emergency department, which is great.
Yes.
Because I've gone and met with them and I've said, here's the thing, because your emergency department, their job is to save your life, to admit you for more testing or more care, or send you home. They're not going to spend the time to do a full concussion evaluation. It's not appropriate environment, and it's frankly not within their scope. So let's not knock the emergency department for not doing more.
They're
If
doing what they're
if you're
supposed to do.
stable and you can go home, that's great. But previously, at least the ones in our area, I would, before all they could say was, well, nothing we can do, so go follow up with your family physician. But now they go, nothing we can do, but she can call Stacey, get on her schedule. She can see within 48 hours, and let's get you taken care of right away. And it's such a relief for them to have a resource, right? So in your area, yes, you can
Yeah.
absolutely Google search, concussion care near me, concussion
Mhm.
rehab near me. I do a lot of telehealth. And I've seen people all over the state. I've seen people out of the state,
Mhm.
because, we can do a lot via telehealth as well. And
That's
also,
great.
if you find a concussion specialist, let's say, for instance, that let's say your daughter got a concussion, and
Yeah.
because of you and Elsa, you're like, okay, you're going to go talk to Stacey.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
we do an initial evaluation via telehealth. And I say, okay, well, I really would like her to also get some physical therapy for her neck because there might have been some whiplash mechanism.
Mhm.
I can search your area for you because I know what I'm
Mm.
looking for.
Mm.
Right. And I can give you a list of providers in your area that look like they're up to date with best practice, that look like they understand this new consensus statement that just came out this past June that talks about early active rehab. How are the clinicians at that clinic trained? What is their background? Are they just using physical therapy tools and strategies which are limited by insurance? That can be challenging for my physical therapy colleagues. Well, all I can really do is vestibular. Yes,
Mhm.
for some patients, vestibular is great, but not every concussion patient is a vestibular patient. So
Mhm.
kind of like peeling back all those layers, that's why I call myself a navigator, because I want to
Yeah.
help people find the fit that's right for them.
And that's so
See,
important with the telehealth piece because I
Yeah.
remember as a kid, we were driving in a snowstorm and my mom hit ice. The brakes locked on the Suburban. We rolled 2.5 times. I remember like I was upside down and I just saw like the
oh
A&W
my
hamburgers and
gosh.
the French fries,
Oh, yeah.
sliding down the windows. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I kind of went into shock for a minute.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then my brother was pushing me out the door. We went and got help. I was running to the road.
Oh my gosh.
But I remember going into the emergency room, and that's exactly what they said. They said, if she has a concussion, go home and rest.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
I love what you're saying. And I hope everybody really hears what you're saying about patients advocating for
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
Because
Mhm.
the fact that someone can call you and do telehealth with you to get those, because I don't know what I'm looking for. And especially growing
Right.
up in a rural
Yeah.
town in Idaho, I can guarantee you my town doesn't know either, probably,
Right.
right? And so
Mhm.
I love that you said that and that you're getting the word
Huge.
out about it and
Mhm.
educating people on it. It's just, oh, that's such an amazing thing that
See,
you're
it's
doing.
a game
Thank you.
changer. That's a game changer. I mean,
That's the hope.
yeah,
Yeah.
what I remember being told was don't go to sleep. Don't let them
Right.
sleep.
Hmm.
Like rest, but don't let them fall asleep. And if they fall asleep, wake them up, and you were like, oh my God, am I going to
Mhm.
die if I
Like,
fall asleep? But yeah,
yeah.
like hold them up with toothpicks.
One of
So,
my most recent blogs, actually, one of my most recent blog posts was, "Can I sleep after concussion?"
it-
Well,
Yeah.
right.
So it explains that. Yeah.
and
Mhm.
that brings up to our next question is when are you cleared from a concussion? Like, what are the signs to know you're okay?
So this is something that's pretty new in the concussion research. The way we used to do it for years and years and years, myself included, once your symptoms have gone away, you're good to go. It turns out that the brain might not be fully healed, even if all of the clinical symptom presentation has resolved. So, in other words, all the headaches are gone, you're sleeping fine, you're thinking fine, there's no mood changes,
Mm.
there's no dizziness. We used to say, okay, awesome, now we say, okay, we'll do a graduated return to play and you're off and running. However, there's this physiologic change that occurs after concussion that is still present potentially 3 weeks after that mechanism. And then for some people, it's even longer, depending on, their symptom, their back, not their symptoms, but their background, their predisposing factors and that sort of thing. Some people heal more quickly. Some people heal more slowly. It depends on a lot of factors. But just to base the clearance on symptoms having resolved, isn't necessarily a guarantee that that injury is healed.
Mhm.
So that's where the person that's trained in the newer protocols for concussion management will know, okay, we're going to use a number of different factors to determine whether this has physiologically healed, right? So there's a lot of testing that I do. There's a test for the vestibular system, for the ocular motor system. There's an app that I use called Sway that measures balance, reaction time, impulse control, visual processing speed, and memory. So I can get objective measures instead of just, well, I think I'm okay. Right? I can actually have data points instead of an injured brain trying to assess itself and give accurate information. There's a treadmill test that we do called the Buffalo Concussion Treadmill Test, and this is now considered pretty much gold standard. And what we do is we exert the person, we get their heart rate up, 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 and we watch and see what their symptoms do. Excuse me, for some people, their symptoms get better when their heart rate is up. For some people, their symptoms get worse. For some people, their symptoms don't change at all. And depending on how their symptoms respond to the exertion, maybe it's even just the impact on the treadmill that gives us additional information. So really it's in the absence of any deficits on any of those other systems that we discussed, in addition to resolution of symptoms, in addition to can these symptoms be provoked or can they be brought
Like
back
triggered.
under exertion, which is where it's super important with sports.
I have we have two more questions for you, but I have a friend, I'm going to have her call you because
Okay.
this is fascinating. 6 years ago,
Mm,
she got back from a trip to Europe with her daughter, flew into Oakland Airport, was at the crosswalk to go to the parking lot. A car spun out of control, jumped the curb, hit the stoplight pole,
yeah.
and it came down, and she protected her daughter, and it hit her in the head. I just saw her the other day, and she still is dealing with memory loss and like gets in her car to go somewhere, doesn't know where she's going.
Yeah.
And it's constant. And
Yeah.
she's on disability. She could not go
Yeah.
back to work. She worked in like mortgage financing, and
Yeah.
there was a lot of numbers and things to remember, and
Yeah.
she couldn't do it. So I'm going to have her call you because it was just sad that this,
Yeah.
it's gone on this long. And I don't know. I'm sure she's seen people, but not to this level. So anyway,
Right. Right.
little side note,
We'll sign up.
you're gonna get a new client.
Thank you. I appreciate
But
the referral.
yes, but the whole show, Girl, How'd You Get That Gig is really not only about all the various jobs that are out there and available in sports, but also there's a sense of female empowerment, which is why we only interview women. And
Mhm.
so one thing we always like to know is like your industry regarding females. Now, you mentioned early, that you had a mentor, a female mentor as an athletic trainer, and that was very unusual because there weren't many women
Yeah.
in that space. Going towards the concussion specialist space, what does that look like? Is it equal with male counterparts? And, does it, or where do you think it needs to go regarding female presence?
I think it's pretty equal at this point as far as the research, who are the powerhouses in the research. Um, they're the one female that is really a trailblazer in this space, especially studying CTE, is Anne McKee, and she's based out of UPMC. And she's there with a couple of male colleagues, but she is essential in the research that's coming out regarding CTE.
Mm.
As far as the clinicians, I've seen an equal mix, which is really nice to see that collaboration across the board. I find that depending on the person, sometimes they respond better to that maybe more female nature, nurturing sort of energy, and where other people may want that more like maybe they respond better to the male energy. But having the option, I think, is what's so nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to be able to kind of pick and choose in that regard. But it's a space that does not necessarily have to be male dominated or
Mm-hmm.
anything less than equitable across the board. I can tell you in the athletic training profession, when I started, it was 65% male, and
Mm-hmm.
now it's switched, and now it's
Mm-hmm.
more women in athletic training than men. And that's an evolution that I've seen within my own career, which is pretty extraordinary. And what's so funny is that it's hard to get guys in, like the high school kids, it's hard to get the boys interested in athletic training. They're like, well, that's kind of like momish, nursish thing. That's the vibe they get.
That's
And
funny.
so I always have to give a shout out to Rick Burkholder, who's the head athletic trainer for the Kansas City Chiefs. He single-handedly brought women onto the sidelines as athletic trainers in the NFL. He said, we're leaving half the talent pool on the table. There are some extraordinary clinicians out there. And if we're only interviewing men, we're missing 50% of the talent pool. And oh, by the way, all of these NFL players had female athletic trainers at their universities. It's not new to them.
Wonderful. I love
Yeah.
that answer. That answer
Yes.
is so
So
exciting.
great. All right. So to end on, Stacey, for anyone listening, what is the best piece of advice you have for either working in sports or in life for them?
Ooh,
Big one.
big one.
We like
Whopper.
to wrap up big.
Yep.
I think the biggest mistake we all make is having self-limiting beliefs. And I think one of the ways, I know early on in my career, I was really good at not thinking I was good enough for whatever reason. If you can't think of a reason, I'll give you 5. Of
We're
why
so
I'm not good enough for this thing.
self-deprecating. I know.
Yes, we are.
And I remember what that mentor, Julie Max, told me once. I just finished graduate school. I absolutely crushed my thesis defense. I did a presentation and they loved it. And I got offered a job, which was tremendous at Pacific. And I suddenly got the butterflies. And I went to Julie and I said, am I ready for this? And she said, you are more than ready. You've been prepared with education, basically all of the stuff on paper. That's all there. The education is there. The skill set is there. The training is there. The experience is there. And she said, I'll never forget this. She said, do you trust me? And I said, oh my gosh, completely. She goes, do you believe in my integrity? And I said, oh my gosh, it's impeccable. And she said, well, if you trust my judgment and you trust my integrity, then trust that I say that you're ready. And so to doubt myself would be doubting her, which I would never do.
Can't do that.
So she flipped the script on me a little bit.
Nice.
And if I didn't have the faith in myself, I relied on her faith in me. And I thought of all these people that prepared me. And I thought, well, they've prepared me such that I can only succeed. And if I don't, I'm letting them down. So I leaned on their belief in me when I didn't have it for myself. And I still do that to this day. We're always growing. That's my other little piece of advice is, never, ever stop learning. Always stay curious, stay curious, stay curious. Nobody ever knows everything. I don't know how to run a business. I'm learning as I go. I didn't know how to be a concussion specialist. I sought specialty certification. Keep learning. And that sets people apart, I think.
We don't know how to do a podcast, and look at us.
Yeah.
See?
We're growing and learning.
Figure it out as we go.
We're growing and learning.
Yep.
Well, Stacey,
Thank you.
I cannot thank you enough for your time and all of your knowledge and how open you have been about everything. It's a new subject for us on this podcast, and I hope it's a conversation that just continues to be mainstream in households because it's so important what you do. So thank you.
Oh, I appreciate the opportunity. And, if even one person hears something in this that helps them or a relative or a coworker or a friend who has a concussion or suspected concussion, or maybe it's going to be a month from now when like, oh, wait, I heard that lady talk about concussions. There's 22 symptoms of concussions, by the way. And most people are only asked about 5 or 6. And if you're only asked about 5 or 6, they're missing 2/3 of the story. So, to understand that there's information out there, there's good information, there's not as good information, but the information is there and it's okay to go look for it and be curious about it and, stand up for yourself and say, no, I understand that getting early active treatment is the best way for me to recover. And I would like that, please.
Well,
Yes.
I gotta ask though, I know he said the end, but you say 22 symptoms. So
Mhm.
what's most common? What's one nobody would think is a symptom of a concussion?
Oh my gosh. The ones that people are asked most often about are headache, dizzy, nausea, kind of foggy, difficulty concentrating. The ones that people are always surprised at when I ask are mood symptoms, feeling irritable, sad and anxious, feeling more emotional. I'm very weepy for not understanding why. Sleep difficulties are concussion related. Yeah, gut health is affected by concussion. Yeah,
The
feeling
reason
tippy.
the
Yeah.
reason I'm kind of laughing, I'm not laughing at what you're saying, but I'm like, maybe I'm not in menopause. Maybe I have a concussion the last
Yeah, it's menopause.
damn.
That's a whole other subject.
They're very similar.
They're very similar. Yeah, that brain fog thing is no joke.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks,
Just can't thank you
My
enough. This was
pleasure.
fascinating. Oh
Amazing.
my
I feel
gosh.
like I've been through school, through
I love
I
class,
it.
know.
back
I
to
love it.
school.
And the quickest 1 hour class you've ever sat through.
Yes,
Fantastic. All right.
educated.
Stacey, you can go ahead and hop off,
Okay.
and we're going to promote our next guest, and we'll be in touch when your episode's up. Thank you so
Sounds
much.
great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh. That is like the coolest stuff.
It
And I
is,
feel like so much more informed for Gracie now in
right?
volleyball and myself, like any bonks and stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
Okay. So that was fascinating. I'm so glad she came on. Next up, we hit another number 20, episode number 20 of Girl, How'd You Get That Gig is coming up next. Who do we have on tap, Celeste?
All right, we're going to go to the NBA next with Dawn King, who is the Vice President of Corporate Sponsorships. And she works for the Houston Rockets.
Yeah.
Not only is her resume killer, but you know her personally, Amy, and she
I
has
do.
the personality to match. So I cannot wait to hear from her.
She is so much fun, and I've gotten to know her a little bit through my ambassadorship with Sonoma County Wine Growers. So I just want to take a shout out to them because we wouldn't have her on if I hadn't started working for them. So it's really fun seeing how all these connections are bringing guests onto our show. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on our pod. Make sure you follow us on all of our social platforms because now you can win prizes like
Woo-hoo.
my children's book or one of Celeste's intention candles. I want an intention candle.
Yeah, I'm
We
going to
gotta
send you one.
talk.
I
Oh,
know.
good. I'm like, where's mine? Much more. The handle to follow at Girl Gig Podcast.
Yes, swag. Swag is always it, right, Amy?
swag.
So we are going to pick a winner on May 22nd on our Instagram. So follow us, get people to follow us so that they
Mhm.
can win and win big. Our Instagram handle, just so you remember it, is at Girl Gig Podcast.
Yep. Gotta follow on Instagram to qualify to win. We randomly pick a winner May 22nd. In the meantime, you can listen to Girl, How'd You Get That Gig on your favorite podcast app, or we'd love it if you would subscribe on our YouTube channel. It's free. For Celeste Gearing, I'm Amy G. Until our next episode, go get